Good morning, Year 5. I hope we're all very well today. Welcome to our SPAG lesson. So what I would like you to do, just as normal, make sure you have your exercise book out, SPAG written at the top, LO underneath, which is written on the slide in front of you, and today's date, Tuesday, the 12th of January. And just before we begin, just a reminder, you can replay, rewind the video as many times as you like. That's absolutely fine. And also just a reminder that this little image in the bottom corner of the pen and paper is when I want you to be doing some writing for me, please. Okay, so let's get on. So relative pronouns is what we're going to be focusing on to begin with today. So pronouns, remember, we touched on that yesterday, is when it replaces a noun, so things like he, she, and it, and it's when it begins a relative clause. Okay, so let's have a look at them. So add the most suitable relative pronoun to the sentence below. So which of these three words, these relative pronouns, makes the most sense when slotted into this sentence? So the girl that lives next door is 10 years old, the girl which lives next door is 10 years old, or the girl who lives next door is 10 years old. So have a little think. Of course, the girl who lives next door. Match the phrases to the most suitable relative pronoun. So just pause the video quickly for me and work out which sentences go best together, which ones work, which relative pronouns go with the rest of the phrases. Okay, and here are answers. So whose dog is huge, where we first met, and who loves netball. Okay, these relative pronouns match them phrases. Now what I'd like you to do is, you're going to be doing some writing quickly now. So I want you to combine and write the sentence parts below using the two relative pronouns to create two full sentences. So you're going to combine two of these lines, okay, using one of these relative pronouns. So you're going to combine them together using one of them and combine the other two using the other one of them. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Please get that done for me. Okay, and here's our answers. So we saw the girl who lives in the cottage using that relative pronoun, and Sean helped the dog that had escaped from the garden. So we're going to move on now to recognising relative clauses. So relative clauses, remember, we've been through before already, but we're touching it again now. So relative clauses, we have our main clauses in a sentence and we have relative clauses in the sentence. Our main clause is the clause or the group of words that makes sense on its own. Okay, but our relative clause is the clause that does not make sense on its own. If that was just a standalone sentence, it would not make sense. That's our relative clause. So work out the relative clause in this sentence below. So we'll go through this together. So we've got our sentence is Charlie, whose mother was a nurse, helped the little girl. So we've got our first phrase, Charlie helped the little girl. That's one phrase. And our second clause here is whose mother was a nurse. Okay, so which of those clauses doesn't make sense on its own? Which is the relative clause? Okay, of course it's this one. Whose mother was a nurse would not make sense on its own, so therefore it is the relative clause. So again, pause the video, give this a little go, label the parts of the sentence with an M for the main clause and relative clause with an R. So which clause makes sense on its own and which one does not, then label them correctly. Okay, of course, Sarah's resistance ones is our main clause and which is in Wales is our relative clause, as it does not make sense on its own. It is dependent on the main clause. So Jasper thinks that he's underlined the relative clause in the sentence below. They look forward to break time when they can visit the tuck shop. So what I want you to do now is just pause the video and have a little think whether you think he's underlined the relative clause or if he's underlined the main clause. Which clause makes sense on its own? Okay, so of course Jasper is incorrect. He identified the main clause. They look forward to break time makes perfect sense on its own. However, when they can visit the tuck shop makes no sense on its own. Okay, so therefore that is the relative clause. So he's incorrect. So now we're going to look a little bit further into using relative clauses. So tick the box of the relative clause that can be added to the main clause below. So pause the video quickly. Should be nice and easy. We can go to the part where we can play football, or we can go to the part which we can play football. Okay, of course the answer is where we can play football. So now I want you to write your own embedded relative clause in the sentence below using the relative pronoun where. Remember to punctuate your sentence correctly. So you're going to rewrite the sentence and put in your own relative clause in this sentence using the relative pronoun where. Okay, so if you want to have a look, rewind, have a look at some of the other examples that have been used. If that helps you, that's absolutely fine. Just pause the video, give that a go for me. There's loads of options, so you should be able to get it right. So pause the video and give that written down for me. Okay, so you have a look at our answer. So this is an answer I came up with. So the leisure centre, where I'm going to have my birthday party. That's my relative clause with my relative pronoun where. Has a swimming pool with fantastic slides. Okay, so make sure you've written down your idea and I'll have a look at it later. So now I want you to do again a bit more writing. Write a sentence using a relative clause which includes the following words. So I want you to use all these words. Remember your relative pronouns here, which is which, and remember to punctuate your sentence correctly. So pause the video, have a go using all the words. It's quite tricky, but give it your best go. Okay, here's, and that's where I came up with. So the young girl who was really pleased with the new trousers, that's your main clause, which had a fancy belt on them as well. Okay, so I've added that relative clause on the end there, okay, using the relative pronoun which. Now we're going to be looking at removing, omitting relative pronouns. So it just means removing and omitting is exactly the same thing. So we're removing the relative pronouns from a sentence and it still makes sense. That sounds a little bit confusing, but we'll go through it now and I'm sure you'll understand. Okay, so here we're going to identify the relative pronoun in each sentence. So pause the video, and each sentence is a relative pronoun. Just highlight that for me so you know where the relative pronouns are. Okay, of course, here they are. So we're going to focus mainly on this first one here. So I really enjoyed the dinner that I ate last night. So obviously that is our relative pronoun. However, if we removed the word that, if we omitted the word that and read the sentence again, would it still make sense? Should we have a go? I really enjoyed the dinner I ate last night. Okay, it makes perfect sense to learn its own. So we could omit or remove the word that and the sentence still makes sense. Okay? So underline any relative pronouns that could be removed in a sentence. So pause the video, find a relative pronoun, see if you removes it, it makes sense. Okay, so of course that's our relative pronoun. If we removed it, would it still make sense? The woman I was questioning suddenly fainted. It makes perfect sense without the relative pronoun whom. Finally, what I want you to do is rewrite the following sentences, removing relative pronouns where possible. So you're going to rewrite this phrase, find your relative pronouns, remove them, and see if it still makes sense. So pause the video and give that a go for me. Remember to write down your answer. Okay, so let's have a look. Remember the supercar we saw speeding around the racetrack? It was driven by an elderly lady we met yesterday. Okay, so the two relative pronouns that and whom have been removed and the sentences still make sense. Okay. Last one for me. Zoe and Mark are discussing the sentence below. The cowboy, whose horse was well trained, was able to lasso the bull. Zoe thinks that the relative pronoun can be removed, but Mark thinks the relative pronoun cannot be removed. Who is correct? Explain why. So just pause the video for me. And what I want you to do is have a look for the relative pronoun in the sentence, remove it and see if it would still make sense. And then you can tell me if Zoe is correct or if Mark is correct. Okay? So, of course, Mark is correct because the sentence would not make sense without the relative pronoun whose. Okay, so if we read it again, the cowboy, horse was well trained, was able to lasso the bull. Of course, that would not make sense. Okay. Thank you very much, Year 5. Okay, if you need to rewind or replay the video, that's absolutely fine. Do it as much as you like. Make sure you get your worksheet that's attached to this done as well. Thank you very much for Year 5. Enjoy the rest of your day.